Good morning, everyone. I'm Kanishka Verma, and I'm thrilled to be conducting this fantastic fireside chat with three outstanding individuals who excel in their respective fields and serve as a great source of inspiration for all of us. We have with us Akriti Gaur, who is a lawyer and doctoral candidate at Yale Law School, where she also serves as tutor in law. She's a resident fellow with the Yale Information Society Project and also works with the Genocide Studies Program Digital Atrocity Center. She completed her LLM from Yale Law School in 2022. Before that, she was a senior resident fellow at a legal think tank in New Delhi and a policy advisor on technology law. She has advised the Government of India, the Supreme Court of India, and bodies of the United Nations on tech regulation and legislative drafting. Secondly, we have with us Eeshita Bajpai. She's a psychology graduate with an MBA in human resource management. She works with the consumer arm of Godrej Group, currently managing talent management and rewards, as well as business partnering with supply chain functions. She's a curious person by nature and is very passionate about animal welfare. She's out on a personal target to visit each country in the world before she dies. We have with us Natasha Arya, who's a third year undergraduate student at UC Berkeley, where she studies computer science. She joined Exen in ninth and was the president in 2021 and mostly worked in design and motion graphics. As of now, Natasha loves building useful products as an engineer and is also involved in the startup space. The past summer, she worked at Duolingo in New York as a software engineer. Thank you all for being on board. It's quite fascinating that all three of you graduated in different years. Akriti completed her studies in 2010, Ishita in 2013, and Natasha in 2021. I'm curious to learn about the evolution and changes that Exen has seen over the years. Akriti, would you like mind beginning by sharing your journey? And then Ishita and Natasha, I would appreciate if you guys could continue with your experiences on the same.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to start. I just wanted to say that I'm really happy and excited to be here today. It's so nice to see all three of you. And thank you, Kanishka, and to the Exen team for inviting me here today. Um, I joined Exen when I was in class seven. So, that was, gosh, I'm forgetting the year that was in. It's been that long. But I was initially in the quizzing school, and I remember working with a few of my friends at Exin and sort of getting into computer science trivia and sort of representing Exin at some of the inter-school competitions back then. And slowly, I think, and the one thing that one of the many things that I absolutely love about Exin was the space to figure yourself out and choose your interests and then sort of nurture them. I don't think that's anything that's changed at all. If only it's become deeper and more exciting for newer students and all of you here. So I think from quizzing and then moved to group discussion. It was at Exim that I discovered that I like to talk. So and it was an interesting discovery because I think that sort of took me to my eventual path in the law, and it gave me sort of the confidence to really think about my career in the way that I ended up. So I think the way I see and the way I've seen Exin is like a very safe, secure space, which where Mukesh sir and the faculty and all your like all the Exin members, all your friends around have always give you that space to make mistakes, to learn, to discover your interests, change your mind many times, but keep doing what you like.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. What about you, Ishita?
So I joined Exen, I think it was in ninth, where they were having the in like recruitment program that runs, and group discussion was just one of the topics. And so somebody had come from Exen to make the announcements in each class. And so my English teacher, we were having English period at that point. And then she was like, Ishita, you like to participate and like you like to chatter, so why don't you go out of the classroom and chatter? And I was just like, I hadn't heard of Exen at that point of time. And I joined in seventh grade, so walked up and somehow by the end of the day, we were in the last round, and I was just like, this is surreal. But after that, it was like an I think you get introduced and you get inducted very swiftly into like a family, and you don't really understand what that means till you're in it. And at that point of time, I actually, Akriti and Arsha were there, but there were very few, like much fewer uh, female members of the team, right? So, but Mukesh sir used to pamper us, like he used to treat us like we were the special, lot amongst the others. So he never made us feel like we were in the minority at all. And actually nobody in the club as well, so it just becomes like such a healthy family, and we're focused on, like, winning and like doing better and like making the Exen event grander every single year. So there's a lot of shared passion that everyone brings. And like Akriti said, like everyone's very different. Like I was into group discussion people, but people who I was close to were into something absolutely, that didn't really connect. But everyone appreciated each other for the skills that they brought to the table. And you just put it together as a team, so like the sum became larger than the parts. So I think but I also don't think that that's changed. If only now, like now the stakes have gotten higher, and we're doing greater, achieving bigger things. But I think the thread, I feel like Mukesh sir has been able to, like, inculcate like a common thread amongst every member. So yeah, that's been the Exen experience.
That is so true. And I am so glad that it's still continuing and it will always continue, hopefully, the Exen spirit. What about you, Natasha? How would you describe your experience?
I really resonated with what Akriti and Ishita mentioned, and I think like it was a really great community. And I think the best part for me was that it really introduces you to so many things, even if you're not directly involved in them. Like I was only doing mostly design at that point, but even then you knew how to organize events, like how basic things like writing emails, like how do you reach out to people, connecting with people, and making all of these friends doing different things. So you get so much exposure at such an early age. And when I was in exile, I used to feel like, oh, I'm so behind on this and that. But when you get to college, you realize that there's very few people who've had so much exposure to not just the like field or department that you were in, but also other fields. Like even if I was doing design, I was still going to like hackathons, maybe attending like a quiz for fun. So when you do all of these things, you get to know so much. And from what I hear from members, Exen is only growing and getting better every year. And like, with tech changing, there's so many new things coming up. Like we now have girls in tech, we have things like space tech, like machine learning. Like everyone's doing so much and it's only growing. So I think it's definitely like one of the best communities I've been in so far.
Yeah, that is so true. And you mentioned girls in tech, and that was my next question. This holds a very, very special place in my heart. As members of Exen, we have consistently strived to promote girls in STEM fields, and we have made significant progress with that as well. I'm curious to know about your experiences as individual in the tech industry regarding this issue. Have you faced any discrimination, and how do you think things are changing with time? Is there any like significant change in the workspace with regard to this?
So I'm not gonna be able to answer for like girls in tech, but I can say that the girls in tech, like piece, we launched it as a G Light program in my last year, and then it became like now what it is today. So I'm actually hearing about it, and it feels pretty nice. I don't really have an answer for the girls in tech question, so
Right.
I'll hand it off.
What about you, Akriti and Natasha?
Yeah, I think as a I mean, I can speak to some of my early experiences at Exin, and then maybe what I've seen as a lawyer in tech, which is, like it's not a STEM field, but it's a intersection rather of tech research and how regulation works. But I do remember, and I think Ishita made this point earlier that, when we joined Exen, there were very few girls in the club. And I remember that, Radhika was, our president that time. And so I entered Exen when Radhika and Gursartaj were sort of at the center of everything. And I would see Radhika, I think she started the group discussion, or it was in her time that it sort of became, a thing that people were doing and like representing schools in these group discussion events. And I remember seeing her go to these events and like win them and like just be an absolute star. And, I was like, oh, wow, this is, it's just so nice to see someone and look up to someone like that. And that only increased over the years because, there's a lot more women, a lot more girls who not only in Exin, but like you see people like you, outside. Yeah, so that's like one of my early experiences. Of course, there's like a larger conversation to be had about how women generally feel in the workplace, how they're sometimes not as well represented in a classroom or a research group or a meeting. So I think we're all sort of navigating our ways through that. But I think being in Exin sort of gives you some, like, it prepares you for the future. It prepares you for what lies outside school. And I think that helped me a lot.
Yeah, and I also agree that like being like a woman in tech or like girls in tech, it's a larger problem for sure. And like in classrooms, you kind of see that like, okay, maybe the proportion isn't as good. But I think through clubs like Exen or other like programs and like girls in tech initiatives like this, it's definitely getting better. Like often you do find yourself being like the only woman in the room, or like even in the workplace, maybe there's not a lot of like female like engineers on the team. Like it happens, but I think you kind of go in, if you go in with like confidence in your own abilities and kind of deal with like, this imposter syndrome that you feel, you can definitely navigate it. It's a little hard sometimes, but I think it's changing and it's getting better. And in general, because it's like a conversation that everyone's having, I think people are more like inclusive and respectful. So I would say, yeah, just find a good community, like find a supportive group of girls who'll always, have your back. You can vent to, rant to, support each other. And it's a good journey.
Yeah, that is so true. Yeah. Could you guys tell me about your favorite memories about Exen, like when you were there, about how you organized the event and how Girls in Tech happened, or anything? I would love to hear about that.
I'm taking a moment to think because there's so many of them.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I started thinking, and then there was like a flood, and now I'm trying to pick up
Yeah.
threads of it. But Natasha, we'll let you go first here.
I think I'm like, it's hard to think of like a particular memory off the top of my head, but I think
You're the
just going
freshest at this point, right? So you get an
yeah.
edge.
Yeah. I think for me, it was just going to events overall, and just like, I think those were one of the best like memories, especially because school after a certain point, even though this is a school platform, maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but it does get boring. And you kind of want to do new things and go out, meet other people, like do these fun things. So I think events definitely were one of my best memories, and all the free food that you used to get.
Um, so I think for me, the Exen, like actually the our event that we used to host, um, the experience of doing that year on year and actually seeing myself and the people around me, the team around me, graduate from little like incompetent infants who really didn't have an idea of like karna kya hai. I'm here, just make me useful. From there, like it's so when you get into the corporate space, or when you like later in life, you realize that these are not small things. Like to be able to rally a team, to be able to organize stuff, to be able to, I mean, or like try and get the freebies that come along with it, like all of that haggling, that those are life skills that you're learning, right? And you're doing that within such a positive environment. It was amazing. And I was like, I grew up in a very strict household, so the experience of being able to stay that late in school or like anywhere for that matter, for me it was just like a revolutionary thing, that you're allowing me here with like raat ho gayi hai. So but that, just that trust and like the responsibility that comes along with it, that was amazing. And also for me, the farewells, the because we just make such a like big deal about things, and we make people feel so good about leaving. It was just the tradition that you keep alive, and just that commitment to it, that was pretty, those were some of my favorite memories.
Yeah, I was just looking at the chat, and I think Vishesh mentioned that pizzas were the draw at that time. I think that was my time as well, when pizzas were like the biggest thing. And when I was thinking of like all my memories, that pizzas have been at like some level in them. And I remember, I mean, my first time like organizing Exen, in class 12, like, when you're at the sort of the responsibilities on you, the accountabilities on you. And I remember briefly there was a time when we were raising funds for that year. And I think this was the time of the recession, which at that point, like in school, like, I don't think I truly appreciated what that really means. For me, at that point, the global recession meant Exen के पैसे कैसे आएंगे, or like, how are we going to fund how we do these events. But I remember like there was this big fear that this year Domino's, or I don't remember which company it was at that time, is not going to sponsor us. And there was like, we had like midnight calls and like emergency meetings and stay backs, and like, asking pretty much everyone to connect us to like the top people at Domino's, and like, go meet them. And I remember doing all of this with other Exen members, and we finally got the pizza. So the tradition, I think, stayed. But yeah, a lot of my memories are in the Exen lab, just hanging out, with other Exen members, sometimes just sitting in Mukesh sir's office when he wasn't there, because it's like the AC was so effective. And I remember there was this big Mac sitting there, and the stay backs, the LAN parties. It was where I discovered I really liked gaming. And so that that was a fun discovery. But yeah, I can go on and on. But yeah, really grateful for these.
Oh, I
Actually,
think that really. Sorry,
I
yeah.
was just thinking that we're like a pizza obsessed batch, right? Like our farewells were in Pizza Hut, and then we had Domino's for the thing. We're gonna pay patronage to every pizza.
It was the e-Gurukul lab, yes. I don't know, is it still the e-Gurukul lab?
Yeah. That's what we call this.
Oh,
Call it.
great.
Oh,
Yeah. And also the pizzas, they still are the favorite. Everything we are going to have, farewells, events, everything we do order pizza only. So I
we
think
just
that will
stick
stay.
to tradition. It's a
Yes,
good
yes.
thing. Let's just call it that.
And it's nice to see Gursar Dajia. He recruited me to
Oh.
Exit. So hey, and thank
Hi,
you.
Guru Sarkar.
Beautiful. I wanted to ask you some questions to like related to your career. I would like to start with Akriti. Akriti, what are your thoughts about regulation in the technology industry? Monopolies like Google and Meta, they have enjoyed their highly dominating share in the market for decades now. And there's recently been talk of how lobbying in the US has played a huge role in legislators turning the other way when it comes to these big companies. In the past, governments have done everything in their control to actually promote anti-monopolistic behavior, but don't seem to do so much like till now. And so, what are your thoughts on that? What can we do to actually change this around?
That's a super interesting question, and it's really at the center of what the tech law debate is, not only in the US right now, in India, all over the world. Um, the lobby is real. And of course, there are dedicated teams, and all of you probably know this better than I do, since you have worked or interned with those tech companies, but there are, dedicated groups that a lot of the big ones have, which are, which forge connections with government officials, and, which develop those relationships. Now, in the US, there is a lot of movement on that. There's a lot of lobbying. There's a lot of like groups which are, which use very well founded legal sort of constitutional rights to defend platforms. And so essentially, in my view, a lot of their responsibilities are hidden behind rights that we cannot remove. Like, in platforms, and platform users, for instance, have a right to privacy. They have a right to free speech. And now what happens is, traditionally, any kind of regulation which, comes to these companies will impact how users behave online. So it automatically attacks their privacy, their, speech, and a host of other constitutional rights. Now, it's a very good argument for the platforms to make that, listen, like, you can't curtail our fundamental rights, and therefore you cannot regulate us. But there is the other side, where people are now, like, there's a lot of scholarship, there's a lot of people in the tech industry who are saying that, no, we see that argument, but you should also realize the kind of harms that you're causing in society. Like, we all know here what kind of misinformation, hate speech, is going on online right now. So there are ways to fix this. There are ways in which governments are thinking of regulating business models. Governments are thinking of sort of attacking the ad-based revenue model. And, with the sort of development of artificial intelligence and the way AI content moderation works, there's a lot of work going on to see how that can be used to sort of protect users. But my sort of finding, I guess, in the last few years has been that across the world, we tend to copy laws that originate in the US or Europe. And it's actually a term that a professor came up with, who's at Columbia. And, she came up with this term, Brussels effect. And the Brussels effect is basically when any sort of regulation of tech sort of originates in Europe. It originates from a very local, domestic sort of need to regulate a platform. But countries like ours, India, and all over the world, they're copy pasting it. And that needs to stop. I don't think we have our own sort of homegrown agenda on how we want to regulate Meta, how we want to regulate X. And that's where, like, a lot of work needs to be done, I feel.
Right, yes, that makes sense. Yeah. Ishita, I wanted to ask you that in a consumer focused industry, how do you use technology to enhance employee engagement and motivation, ultimately to in order to like improve the customer experience?
I want to give a disclaimer that Akriti has gone on news channels and spoken. So I am not going to be anywhere near as good as her answer, but I will give this a shot. Why do I have to go after you?
Stop it.
um, no, so I don't think it only is limited to the consumer industry for that matter. Now, if I speak about my own field, I'm in human resources, right? Um, Across the last 3, 4, 5 years, you've seen a revolutionary uptick in the adoption of tech to use and like across industry platforms, right? So you see avenues opening up, and it was the COVID really like just spiked the urgency and the need for it as well, right? So we had to adopt, and you like, I work in talent management and rewards. However, I can for a fact tell you that we use tech in across the employee life cycle. You use it in recruitment. You use training modules have become extremely sophisticated. Um, you're using AI to handle engagement, right, to an extent. So we're doing all of that, and across. If I had to speak about not just HR, if I had to speak about other functions, say marketing has seen a great speed up in the need for digital marketing, because that is just now the way that we work, right? We don't really watch too much, we don't really absorb advertisement through print media, etc., as much as now. In the entire focus has shifted there. So from a talent standpoint, which I can speak of, tech now, digital skills are have become a hygiene factor from something that is, a plus or a bonus. So and I'm glad that across education systems as well now, the syllabus, the curriculum is upgrading to an extent. And I think I'd love to hear from Kanishka, you as well, right? How that, like, what is current now was probably not what was taught to us before. So I'm glad that the need for technology adoption, while we think it's a sophisticated thing, it's really not. Um, it percolates down to the base. Like every employee, like you said, the employee experience is kind of ruled by how seamlessly you can use tech and integrate it to become intuitive. So yeah.
Right, you're so right. I think today, I think it's just become a basic necessity for anything to function, not just as a tech club, but also I think most of the clubs, even in DPSRKP, I think they do need like some skills of technology to be able to function all together.
Yeah,
Right. So
and Natasha mentioned space tech. Like, I'm really excited that there's something going on about that at Exen, and we've always been at the forefront, right? Like, we'll do things before it becomes traditional. So I'm very
definitely,
excited to hear about that, and I'll probably get in touch with you for more details as well.
yeah. So, Natasha, at your time in Exen, you were doing a lot of design and associated stuff. So, a lot of tools, like in today's date, which are like very good for design, motion design and stuff, they get gatewalled behind like corporate licenses and exorbitant fees. What are your thoughts on how open source and accessible these tools should be to consumers, especially students who can't really pay such large amounts?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do think they should be like as accessible and as cheap as possible because if you wanna get students into these fields and effectively use these tools, like there's always a need to like democratize these tools for everyone so that like everyone can learn, like do things, and it doesn't have to like cost a fortune. And I know like a lot of products like Adobe and stuff, they have really expensive subscriptions, and even though they like cost it just for like different countries, it's still really expensive, especially as a student, even with the student pricing. Um, so tools like Blender, or even like it doesn't have to be necessarily open source, but like any free tools like Figma, let's say, I think that's like a step in like a really good direction. And the fundamental problem sometimes that arises with open source is that like there needs to be someone who's leading the open source project and like planning the roadmap, like dealing with the whole community. So open source I think is great, but there's also alternative business models. For example, how Figma does it, where it's free for students, consumers, people like that, and then they maybe monetize through their like business licensing and like the B2B side of it, where companies pay them for like more commercial uses. So that's also a good model, which makes it free for people like students and really democratizes access to these tools. So I think that's really important for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I think we had a serious conversation now. I think I would want to ask some more exit related questions again. So, but I think a lot of girls and junior girls and boys watching this, they want to know from your perspective that what do you think they should be doing right now as probably 80s, 90s, 10s to upskill themselves, and what are the opportunities that are upcoming for them and for us as well as we go down the path of technology.
Maybe I can start with something and then this can be more of a conversation because you guys have um more recent examples and like more current things to say also. But I think on a broader lens from experience, I feel like there's not one way to enter technology and the field of tech. And I think I spent a lot of my school years trying to figure out how I am interested and passionate about technology, but not in the ways that people around me were. And it took me a while to figure that out. And now there are so many more opportunities. There's not just two or three career streams that everyone talks about, or career counselors tell you that there's only three or four options that are meant for you. There is so much more. So I mean, I would, in fact, if I had to do this again, it's like a very loaded statement, but I feel like I would definitely do more things and do more varied things. I would, not only, I would not specialize at such an early age. um because I mean, you keep growing, you keep changing, and you keep changing your mind. So start with a broad range of interests. Study different courses, do absolutely different things, like computer science, or like cooking, or art, or like political science and computers, because there is a connection. If you're passionate about two or three of these things which are seemingly interrelated, you can connect them, and there is a career out there for you, and you can figure it out. So that's my broad view.
Um, I really resonated with what Akriti said, because while I really loved being in that community, I also had so I was the psychology club president as well, because that's also something that I really like enjoyed, and coincidentally was something that I was good at. So I was like, maybe this is something I can cash in on. But now if I look back, the fact that being an Exen, it's just made me a little more open to technology on a day-to-day basis, right? So I know people around me who maybe who haven't been exposed, and like you don't need to be very good at everything to learn something or the other in Excel. Like even if you're sitting around the table and just talking with somebody else about their thing, you're going to learn, even if you're not you're not uh, you don't, your expertise is not in that field. So I feel like that leaves a very wide open plate for you to pick and choose whatever you like to learn, and that helps you out later in life. So in terms of like anything that I would like to tell to people who are currently in 8th to 10th, I feel the only thing is that I don't have advice, but from my own experience, it's okay, it's very 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 okay to not have answers or have it figured out or have a plan, uh, or not know what you want to do, right? Because that's something that I think it changes firstly, and over time, over your experiences, that's going to evolve. So it's absolutely okay to think that you don't really know what you're doing, as long as you just take like one day and do something, and then it's all just gonna hopefully make sense. At least that's what I'd like to believe. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree that like what Ishita and Akriti mentioned, that you don't have to like box yourself at such an early age that okay, this is the department I'm in, this is what I do, this is what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. Because it will change, and that's a good thing, because as you do things, you experience them, you learn and you grow, and you realize maybe this is what I like and this is what I don't like. So I think even within Exen, I think we had the flexibility where even if you're like doing certain types of things, you can always try out other things, learn from other people, switch around. I think definitely make it like use of that. And even in college, like or beyond that, even if you're, let's say, studying CS, which a lot of Exen people end up doing, you don't necessarily have to do that to even work in tech. There's so many different types of roles where you can just have some tech or coding knowledge, or like design, any type of knowledge, and then like combine it with some other fields that you're interested in. Like Akriti is doing law, and Ishta mentioned she was like interested in psychology. Even if you're interested in, let's say, like bio and stuff, there's so much like biotech and that kind of stuff going on. There's so much design stuff going on. So just try to explore different things until you realize what you like, and don't stress too much in school. You'll always end up figuring it out. And even in college, sometimes there's like kind of this pressure that you have to do internships, maybe you have to like practice like lead code, things like that. Like if you want to do that, great, but that's also not the only path to make it in your career in tech roles. Like there's so many different paths, and all of those are great.
Yeah, that makes sense, Natasha. I think you mentioned college, and this is something that I also wanted to ask personally. That how is the transition like when you move out of school? You have been a part of Exen, you've been part of DPSRKP, and very different clubs as well. So how is it like going to college, and how does college shape you when it comes to your passion and career choices, etc.?
I think that's a really good question. I can't speak for like the college experience for everyone because like it's different for everyone, depends on what country you go and what type of college you go to. But like from personal experience, I think like school is a really good starting point, and then in college you have a lot more opportunities. But at the same time, you come in from school like doing having done Exen, like so many other things, and you're like you've had a lot of experience, so you have maybe some idea of what you want to go into or what you don't want to go into. That's also important to know. I think the transition from school to college, it's definitely hard, and there's a lot of things that college teaches you is that, and like how do you go deeper into things, like how do you become more independent and things like that. But I think it's a great transition, and Exen gives you like a really good springboard to kind of have some background that will allow you to go deeper into like different things, because you learn so much. Like you learn about tech, you learn about organizing events, like talking to people, and you have this great network of friends, alumni, everything. So I think there's so many things to look forward to in college. And I remember I used to be really stressed about going to college, getting into colleges, things like that. But wherever you go, it just works out in the end when you look back at it.
Yeah. What about you, Akriti, Ishita? How has college been for you? Did Exen experiences help with you when you went to college?
I think for me, the core learning in terms of experience was um, everyone brought their own genius, I feel, to Exit. Okay. And however, everyone did not come in the same packaging or personality or like, the kind of personas that we are, they were very, very varied. So if if you think about it hypothetically, would I have thought that I would get along with people the way that I did? I didn't really think so. But it kind of teaches you to look beyond what you think the stereotypes or the typical the typical is. And that's made me, in every each and every interaction, I just try and find like the good or what this person brings to the table. And that's something that Exen has taught me, because people who I didn't think that I would approach and maybe be friends with, because maybe I was intimidated by how brilliant they were, or they were just very, very different, or like their interests were very different from mine. But because I have like very close friends that I have made those friendships with those kinds of people, it kind of teaches you to be very open. And that helped in college, because you should just be extremely open. Let yourself have those experiences. um, get to know people, give be patient with people, give them a chance. And you don't know who will surprise you in what way. So yeah, that was the best piece about Exit.
Yeah, I completely agree and resonate with everything Natasha and Ishita have said. Um, and I think what comes from that is also the fact that I think being an Exen and being a part of this big group and this family and this sort of set of the most brilliant, intelligent people that you'll ever come across, or like the funniest people or the most creative people, and it's just so much to learn from each and every Exen member, each and all every friend of yours at Exen. And so I definitely felt like you know first of all, you never leave Exin. So let me put that out there. So it's not like I ever left Exin, but of course you feel the geographical distance, because you no longer are supported on a daily basis. So I definitely remember feeling that vacuum for a bit, till I discovered my own communities in the way that Ishita described, like just having the curiosity about people and their ideas. But I think also one big thing is, and this is like a learning that goes with you, is that you're never doing anything alone. Nothing is ever something that it's purely your achievement. There's so many people that help you get there or are behind the scenes. And I think just respecting that, acknowledging that, and remembering that is something that Exen teaches you so well. Any task, any prize that you win, or any event that you successfully organize, as a person at the forefront of it, you're not doing it alone. It's not your achievement, it's everyone. And so we stay true to our motto, but it's a learning that goes with you. That you're a small part of something that's bigger than you, if that makes sense.
That sums up the Exen spirit pretty well, we not I. And lastly, I would want to ask you that DPSRK Puram as well as Exen, we are known to pioneer, unconventional careers always, but we still find students struggling pursuing the careers of their choice due to societal pressure, parental pressure, etc. What is your message for such students dealing with it, and how should they go about it?
Ah, okay. There are a few mixed messages here, okay, because um, while it's easy to say that pursue your passion no matter what, the reality of the situation is that if it's a very difficult situation, like ecosystem for you to do that, it is going to take its toll, right? So I think the message that I would say is that don't lose hope, because um, if you push through and decide to like pursue it regardless, good on you, right? And all the very best. But if you don't manage to do that, it's it doesn't become suddenly very bleak, because you never know where one road takes you. And the your agency on your decisions, it kind of grows with time. So you never know when a, you may be able to pivot, right, in what direction. And it may just be better than the direction that you were originally thinking of. So yeah, like, hope is to be found is my basic message.
I can add on to that. I think I agree with what Ishita said, that like you can follow like the quote unquote like conventional path or whatever people think is prestigious, or you like if you have the opportunity to not do that and you find something else. Like I think both of them are valid, and like even if you think that maybe you have some sort of like pressure to follow some path or do something and you can't escape it and you don't like it, maybe try to explore beyond that as much as you can, because now most things are online. Like let's say you're in a field you don't like, then try to talk to people in different fields. There's so many online communities. Like if you search, like find people on Twitter, LinkedIn, like friends, like just make that effort to kind of reach out to people and explore the things that you might think you want to do instead of like your current journey. So there's always like a door that's waiting to be opened, and just keep be on the lookout, talk to people, like meet interesting people, and yeah, don't think that if you didn't take a certain path, then oh, it's like done forever, ab kuch nahi ho sakta. There's always hope, like Ishita said. And yeah.
The best thing in life is retrospective wisdom,
Yeah.
because somehow you rationalize it to yourself and you're like, this is great. So don't underestimate the power of that.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, Natasha and Nishita said it so beautifully. The only thing I mean, just to add on to that is it will be difficult. Like if you're trying to go off a path that's so well followed, and they're like it's very clear, there are steps. It's going to be extremely difficult to stay, to go off that and do something of your own. So I guess patience is key, because if there are there is a scenario where you can't go and follow your dream job, or you don't even know what that is because you've just graduated class 12. Like, you can't know what you're I don't know what my dream job is right now. It changes every couple of years. So I think patience is key, and just knowing that if you think it's a good idea, that you want to do something that's different, that's X, Y, or Z, then just wait and try for it to happen. Because yeah, it can happen.
There's a question that someone wants to ask. Could you guys answer this? Somesh is asking that how do you guys see inclusivity and democratization of cutting edge tech like AI playing out? How does someone who's not open AI experiment without the best researchers, I'm sorry, or GPU clusters in their era?
I can maybe start with the first part of the question, because I think it's so on point. The question of inclusivity, the question of diversity in the ways in which AI applications, and especially what's going on with Chat GPT and other generative sort of AI systems is going on, is that a lot of people in the world who are like us, who look like us, are not well represented in those softwares, in the ways in which they conduct their interactions. And there is a lot of scholarly research and industry research on how can we increase diversity in these AI systems. I still feel that a lot of that conversation is still limited to the Western world. That there are these institutions, and there are think tanks, and there are conferences where I think everyone is committed to the goal of diversity, but that's sort of, there is no public interest incentive in that sense, which is baked in through a law or through a regulation. So that's, I think, one of the missing way gaps. But I absolutely agree. Like, there is a lot more work to be done on the development side of things and on the regulation side of things.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes. I think this is it. I think we've come to an end. Thank you so much for joining this. I think as much as I wanted to do this as a part of Exen, this is something which I personally also wanted to do a lot. What am I doing? I'm so sorry. So thank you so much for joining in. I would love to have conversations with you guys further as well. So thank you. Thank you for joining. Thank you everybody who watched this.
Kanishka, thank you so much. I was having imposter syndrome when you invited me to this thing, and I'm just like, but then over a while I realized that it's gonna feel like a catch up with people that I have wanted to catch up with for a long time. So I'm like, if nothing else than that. But thank you. In all seriousness, thank you so much for doing something like this. It's been amazing to be a part of it. And Akriti, Natasha, it was fantastic to see you guys again.
It's been so nice to see all of you. And yeah, as Ishita said, like, it's been an amazing conversation looking back at Exen and looking at Exen's future, but also so nice to just, chat with all of you. So thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you,
And this
Kanishka.
time, please try and do the cat like lunch at a time when we can all make it in the same city.
Oh, please let me know what expect when you guys are going to be in India because I would love to meet you guys in person as well.
Yeah.
I'm in Bombay, so I'll just have to fly a shorter flight. But yes, let me know when that's on the cards.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you guys.
Thank you. It's great connecting with everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.